Welcome to the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm your host, Danny Gavin, and together with industry leaders and marketing experts, we'll explore the meeting point of mentorship and marketing. We'll discover how these connections have affected careers, marketing strategies, and lives. Now get ready to get human. This episode is brought to you by Audio Academy. Whether you're a recent high school graduate, a busy mom, a working woman seeking to enhance her skills, or a female entrepreneur looking for a better understanding of digital marketing, we've got you covered. Dive into the digital marketing world without drowning in student loan debt or compromising your values. Visit audioacademy.com/podcast and claim $150 off Audio's women's only cohort of our Digital Marketing Fundamentals career course by entering the code MENTOR at checkout. That's odeoacademy.com/podcast. Empower your career and save $150 with code MENTOR today. Hello, everyone. I'm Danny Gavin, founder of OptIIGS, marketing professor, and the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm super excited to have my friend Shelly Fagin here today. She's the former director of SEO at CreditKarma. She's skilled in multiple digital marketing areas and has a passion for design and UX as well. She brings in-depth expertise of SEO and web dev to us today, working in the industry for nearly 20 years. If all of that doesn't keep her busy enough, she's also a contributing writer to Search Engine Journal and a speaker at numerous marketing conferences. She was also the vice president of some, local marketing organizations in Houston, and just overall an amazing person. Welcome, Shelly.
Oh, thank you, Danny. Oh, you're too kind. I have missed getting to be with you in Houston and see you face to face, but thank you for having me on today.
It's an absolute pleasure. So today, obviously, we're going to talk about mentorship and your expertise with WordPress and, of course, AI and SEO. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about your background. We were just talking about this a minute ago, but where did you go to school? What did you study? Sounds like you kind of hopped all over the place. Love to talk about it a bit.
I've been a computer geek all my life, and I actually started, my grandparents bought me this little Apple IIGS green screen computer that I played with when I was really young. And then it got put away in a storage cabinet. And then along came the 90s. I was in high school. I kept hearing about this thing called the internet, but no one around me knew how to get on it. My grandparents wouldn't quite spend the money that it would take to get an upgraded, nice one that had a disk drive that I could put one of those AOL disks into. So I pulled that old green screen Apple out of the computer. And it actually came with a modem, dusted it off, and was able to, I found this dial-up service called Delphi, and was all about figuring out how to get online, and very slowly and tediously. But that kind of started my fascination. Right out of high school, I actually enrolled in our local community college in a computer science program. And I was excited because I wanted to learn how to build things for the web. I was very, very disappointed when the first class they put me in was something called AS400. And let's just say it was the most boring thing ever in my life. And it really had nothing to do with programming or developing for the web. So I kind of stepped away from that program, took more basic classes, took economics, and absolutely loved economics. I did my micro and my macro, ended up moving to Arizona. I went to ASU for a little over a year, took accounting, was really loving accounting. What's crazy is I hated math growing up, but for some reason, when I got to college, business math and things that makes logical sense that we use, just really easy for me and logical. And I really love that side of it. So I thought, maybe I'll do accounting. Basically, I'm very ADD, if you cannot tell. So I cherry pick my classes, and I never really found a true path. I started working actually online after I got pregnant with my first child. So I was early days, 24 years old. Knew instantly I did not want to work in a traditional office or anything like that. I wanted to be able to work from home. So I started teaching myself how to code and buying these old books, because honestly, back then there wasn't a lot of places online to even go and learn how to do this. And I taught myself from a book, HTML, a little bit of CSS, kind of got frustrated, started playing around with different CMSs that were around at the time. Then I naturally was more of, well, if we build something, how do we get it to rank? How do we drive traffic? And that's when I stumbled across SEO. It was a couple of years into my journey and became instantly captured and fascinated. And then knew that I was cheaping out or cheating out, so to speak, in the way I was going about building websites. And then I really, really learned the value of hand coding and understanding how to code and code right. And that was kind of like pivotal changing point in my career, and was able to kind of learn both simultaneously. So I was more in my ADD true self. I was constantly coming up with a million ideas and building out a site for this and building out a site for that. And it was just all about hands-on doing stuff and obviously Twitter. I think when Twitter came around, finally started to find bloggers, people who in the industry were writing about their experiences and sharing. And that's when it was just like turn on the water faucet of learning everything SEO, and very exciting, wild, wild west early days of search. And eventually I was actually invited to work for a local agency. They had worked specifically in the paid search area. They had been outsourcing SEO. They wanted to bring SEO in-house. So I went to work for them for a little bit. I kind of set up all their processes and procedures. And they had a girl who still kicks butt in SEO today, but at the time she's like, help me. She came out of real estate, and they printed, I think, Aaron Wall's SEO book, if you remember that, but they printed her a binder of it and handed it to her and say, here, you're an SEO. It was fun actually kind of setting up all the processes, but I didn't quite feel that some of like my ethics related to search was very much seen eye to eye with the place that I was at. So I ended up stepping away. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to work directly with clients. And so that kind of started my search of what I call highly searched, which was my agency name, consultancy that is still around today. But I basically worked with clients for almost like, say, like the first 12 to 13 years of actually working hands-on in the industry with other people. And eventually always kind of thought I would stay a consultant. I loved being able to have the flexibility, the freedom. I became eventually a mom of 4. So being able to be at home while they were young, have that flexibility, really got a chance to dip my toes in a lot of different niches. Eventually, I went to work with SEMRush, actually. I was asked to come in to start creating their initial Facebook group. So if you haven't joined before, if you're a subscriber of SEMRush, there's a fantastic Facebook group called the SEMRush All-Stars. I was blessed enough to be a part of creating that in the beginning, getting the ball rolling. Now they have some phenomenal team members that lead it that are awesome. But I also was a brand ambassador for SEMRush. So I got the opportunity to go and speak all over the country about using the tool set. But that kind of gave me that insight into actually working for a company in-house. And then that brings me to my last job. I was recruited away from there to come move my family to Charlotte, North Carolina, to come work for CreditKarma, also owned by Intuit. Was surprised by how wonderful it was to work in-house at the enterprise level. So it was kind of a no-brainer to come and take that role. I knew it was going to be a big challenge. Been there for the last 2 years. Previously to CreditKarma, I've always been remote. So I'm actually... I left CreditKarma. Last week was actually my last week. So that's why Danny said formerly. But I'm excited for my next adventure. I'm not ready to announce just yet. That's pretty much my background in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I've got so many things that I want to unpack there. We'll touch on a couple, but I think it's amazing that you literally ran your own agency. Although it wasn't an agency, and then you went into enterprise, which I think is so cool because most people have that opposite experience. But I love how you were willing and open to try something new. That is awesome. I guess another point, a question that I have is, so because you hopped around so much, in your education, I know you have a daughter in college. Are you strict on her? You got to know what you want to do? Or are you kind of open, oh, you can kind of figure it out? I'm so curious about that.
I know. I'm kind of on the fence both ways, and it really depends on my mood. Or I've tried to be super supportive. I want to enable them to be able to be what they want to be. But I also know a lot of times we don't know what we want to be at this young age. My daughter really, really wanted to go to a school called SCAD, which is Savannah College of Art and Design. If anyone's ever Googled the tuition at these fancy art schools, it's not cheap. And so it was kind of scary to do that because, I'm like, oh, what if she gets there? She hates it. It just isn't her career path. And we're, spending all this money. Let's go to a community college. I honestly have been back and forth, but ultimately she was just really convicted. It was what she wanted to do. So I've been supportive. She's starting her junior year this year. She's still there. She's doing really well. I'm trying to grin and bear it when it comes to the tuition side. But, with my boys, I've taken a different approach. My son Cohen isn't going into his senior year. He has an aptitude for coding. He's not a very social person. He loves sitting at his computer and gaming. So like him, I'm like, listen, we can go to community college, take your coding classes. We'll do some coding boot camps. You don't necessarily have to go to some big fancy school because it's going to be all about your skills and what you can do.
Exactly.
So it varies. It really, I think it depends on the kid. But I try to be supportive.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, each kid is a world of, their own. So it's awesome that you're open to that. And it's nice to have like the diversity in the family. All right, so let's jump into mentorship. So Shelly, how would you define a mentor?
I probably spent way too much time in my career struggling it out all on my own. I'm really like one of those people. I feel bad putting people out asking for help. So I usually don't. I also, I think, was in a bubble for the first big chunk of my career where, because I was a mom of four, I worked independently. I couldn't swing or justify budgets to send myself to expensive conferences. I was in a small town for quite a while before we moved to Houston. So we didn't really have other people in my area that were doing what I was doing. So I struggled all alone for a really long time. I think had I opened up and had more mentors, I probably would have seen my career progress a lot quicker. But yeah, I finally, it actually opened back up when we moved back to Houston from the Midwest. There was a really great local search industry group happening in Houston, another really great one in Dallas. I just started going to some of the events and making connections locally. That really kind of was a pivotal change in like my career trajectory and path, to be quite honest.
I look at you as always being an influencer. I didn't realize that like those things actually kind of like pushed you. That's awesome. And it just shows you how important it is to get out and to meet people. Obviously, it's hard when you're a mom, and it is what it is. But it's cool that was sort of the impetus.
It really truly was, because honestly, I am the epitome of someone who has major imposter syndrome. I would watch and listen to people speaking at conferences and just be like, there's no way I can do that. What do I know that these people that are coming that wouldn't already know? Like, there's just no way. It was going and actually forming those connections, I think, one with other speakers and hearing like their side of things and how it is for them, that really started to open up that side of things for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into talking about like who have been some of your mentors in your life. I know Ray Hoffman, and I think she was, instrumental in speaking. And then there's also Melissa Foch. Let's talk about them.
So Ray, actually, most people know she lives outside of Houston in Katy, Texas. So we were a big part of Search Houston together. She really was one of my early role models for female speakers and bloggers. I learned a lot from Ray. I was able to build that confidence that came from conversations with Ray. Expressing there's no way I could do that. And she's like, what, are you crazy? At this point, I'd been in search for probably 12, 13 years. I had a lot of experience. And because I was a one-man shop who did about everything, I had a very diverse skill set, but I just didn't see that. She was able to kind of reframe things in a way to kind of build my confidence and just give me that little bit of confidence that I needed to speak for the first time. And it wasn't for getting that door open. I did my first speaking event at Search Houston. So that was the very first time that I got up and spoke. And I'm like, wait, I like this, because guess what? I'm a geek when it comes to search. And if I get to talk about what I'm passionate about, the fear, the anxiety, yes, going up until the event, until I started speaking, I was like a nervous wreck. As soon as I started speaking, it just all started coming out. And the interactions from the crowd and the conversation, if you love what you do and you know what you're doing, it's definitely, don't let those anxieties keep you from that. And I definitely have to attribute that to Ray giving me that confidence to do it for the first time. And then Melissa kind of comes into play right after that. I had been an attendee for a couple of different years at PubCon at that point. She gave me the inspiration to actually go ahead, the nudge to pitch to speak at PubCon. And I'm like, are you kidding? There's no way I'm going to get picked. The next one was a big Vegas pro one. I'm like, maybe I wait until one of the smaller local PubCons. But no, she kind of gave me a lot of really great tips on how to pitch and how to pitch well. And that was really instrumental as well. I took a lot of time, wrote a very detailed, specific pitch. It wasn't like a monologue or a huge amount or anything like that, but I sent a few different options. It's not generic. I would tell anyone right now, don't ever send a conference person who's choosing speakers a generic pitch. Don't be like, I'll speak on link building. You are not going to get picked. It really needs to have some substance to it. Tell us what are you going to talk about specific to link building? Tell us a scenario that you did or a strategy and how it turned out. And this is what I'm going to talk about, the strategy that we put into place and how we did it. And also, I think something that's actionable is really helpful. So that kind of gave me, confidence. So my outside of SearchU, my next speaking event was at Las Vegas and at PubCon. And oh my gosh, I will tell you, it was very, very scary. I was so nervous. But thankfully at that point, you realize that a lot of the attendees that comes to these conferences, they're in their first few years of their career. They're really just eager to learn and hear what you have to say. Most of the people that are super experienced and will know basically everything that you're saying, they're not either going to be there listening to you or they're your friends and they're there to support you. So either way, those fears that I had early on where people are just going to laugh at me because I'll have nothing to teach them, never realized, so that was really instrumental kicking off. And I'm pretty certain I've spoken at every PubCon ever since. So
I know in my mind right now, it's I think Shelly Fagin and PubCon is basically synonymous. When there's a PubCon, Shelly's there. So it's pretty crazy how that all started. So I want to segue to now mentoring others. So it's amazing. You were on your own for a long time. Suddenly you go into this corporate world, whether it's at Cox or CreditKarma, and you've got people under you and you're mentoring them. So tell me about that. How was it to be a mentor? Obviously, you're their boss, but mentoring them and showing them inspiring. How was that?
Honestly, that shockingly became my favorite part of working as a director. I'm massive geek about the strategy side of things. And even just, I have been an independent person for so long that usually does things. So I'm not used to stepping back and letting other people do everything and me just giving out the strategy. I really, really loved it because I walked into a role that didn't have a lot of senior SEOs on my team. Actually, when I started, we had a couple contractors who were in their first couple of years in search. I had one person who'd been at Credit Karma for a couple of years, but came from the paid side when COVID happened and isn't really, and would say today, they're not really a true SEO. They work more on the project management side of things. So that was really my team. And then I had a new hire that came straight out of college, out of his MBA though. And he had done an internship at an agency and done some link outreach, but that was like the extent. Let me just say this team, they're phenomenal. I was very lucky to walk into such a well-built team. My person that came just out of college, he's fantastic, data side of things. And so he was actually hired because they thought, oh, we need a link builder. And he did link outreach. Kids are like genius when it comes to data analysis. And not only that, he's passionate about search, naturally curious. So even when he wasn't working, he was off researching and just learning, would come to me. And it wasn't like a new first year SEO that typically is very insecure about their thoughts because it's nerve wracking, right? Like you're worried you might harm a business or get, tank traffic if you do something wrong. So a lot of times those early days in SEO is very timid about speaking up or putting out their ideas. But I was very lucky to just have a really smart team to begin with. But what's really cool is they were all very curious and passionate about search. And for me, if I am starting from scratch and hiring a new team, especially if we don't have like these high budgets for very senior marketers, I'm looking for someone who just has that sense of curiosity. You can't teach that. And someone who knows how to dig and keep digging and when to stop, I think is also a very valuable skill set. And honestly, it's the coolest thing ever. I love being able to be there and help them come up with a strategy. For the most part, for me, I always operated, I wouldn't say hands off. I love letting my team get experience. And I think the only way you can get that experience is by actually doing things and sometimes failing. Yes, I'd set those guardrails if I see something like scary going on that could be harmful. Sure, I'm there. But for the most part, I really was championing my team to speak up in leadership meetings, to present, to get that experience, to come to me with their theories. And we put together ways to test these theories and build out some data-driven strategies out of kind of those theories as well. And I think that's the best way to learn. So for me, that was kind of the approach that I took to mentorship, really just being there, being supportive as much as possible, someone as a sounding board, but also letting them get the experience that they need to actually learn. That's really, I think, my favorite thing about being a leader is just watching them grow. And they really, truly have grown so much over the last 2 years. I'm so incredibly proud of my team.
And the dots really do connect because the way that you learned, the way that you've become who you are is because you did the work. So
right.
you like internalized that and then created that opportunity for the people under you, which is amazing. Sometimes people forget where they came from, but you definitely didn't. And that is so cool. Ladies, are you seeking a flexible, satisfying, and well-paying career? Do you resonate with psychology, excel with words, and brave the tech world effortlessly? Digital marketing might be your calling, and our women's only cohort at Odeo Academy is tailored to you. Learn the ropes without a 4-year commitment, without compromising on your values, and without leaving the comfort of your home. Our course is designed to support women from high school grads to business mavens in launching their digital marketing career. Check out audioacademy.com/podcast. And don't forget to use the code MENTOR at checkout for a special $150 off. Act fast. Our Digital Fundamentals career course begins October 29th. Remember, it's odeoacademy.com/podcast. Claim your $150 discount with code MENTOR today. So as we move into WordPress, at OptIG, we've been big proponents of WordPress as a website platform for a very long time. As you know, it frequently gets brushed off as being a basic site platform for beginners and bloggers, and certainly not something for large enterprise level businesses like we spoke about a couple minutes ago. What is it that you like so much, specifically as it relates to enterprise level business sites?
So WordPress for me, I love the flexibility of it. And there's a lot of bad WordPress sites out there. Do not get me wrong, but it's all about what you do with it. I think that determines if it's going to be good for you or if it turns to be something not so great. It's super flexible and it can be as flexible as you need it to be, especially at the enterprise level. You can make it headless and you can use it just for people to manage their content. And if you have a big development team who wants to, have the JavaScript and React driven pages and pull in data from places that they don't necessarily want to store in WordPress, you can do that as well. So there's a lot of flexibility. The other good thing I would say is the economy in WordPress is huge. And by that, I mean, like, if you ever need people to help you, you're always going to be able to find people that understand WordPress. And just because someone knows a certain type of code, they know PHP, yes, they can definitely go in and do tinkering around and do things for you in WordPress. But I would still prefer someone who really understands the ecosystem of WordPress. They understand the intricacies of it and whether or not, the code that you're doing or the customization could potentially be harmful or it could break in a future update. I think it really is good that if you're working in a CMS, someone really, really understands how it works, because it's not about building for the now, but thinking about the future as well. Because it's definitely not fun to have to come back and clean up a site that has been used and abused and overly customized over the years. And then suddenly it's really slow and, WordPress is WordPress as well. So I see that a lot. So yeah.
Talking about slowness, which I know this isn't the point, but do you have any favorite WordPress plugins that you recommend? I'm sure you have a list.
Right, I do. Obviously, so on the SEO side, I've always used Yoast. Yoast does a really great job. Also used Rank Math as well. They have some really cool stuff. It really depends on the site, but I always prefer Yoast. For me, I always say the less plugins, the better. But there are certain things that belong in a plugin that don't necessarily belong in a theme. You really need to know when you use a plugin for something and when you don't. I love, is it WP Rocket or is it WP Rocket?
Yeah, I think it is WP Rocket.
Yeah, I started to get their names all mixed up.
It's okay.
Sakuri, I would say, like, hands down, because no one wants a hacked WordPress site. WordPress isn't an easy hack, but unfortunately, because it's the biggest CMS, it becomes the most targeted and the most vulnerable. And because it's open source, that makes it even more so. The plugins and the themes that you use on it can make it vulnerable if you don't know what you're doing. So even if you do, I would suggest you have a security plugin and Sakuri, because if it does get hacked, they'll actually help you clean it up. So yeah, those are like my go-tos. And then the rest really depends on like what the site is and what we're building, what we're looking to accomplish. But I'm a little lean on the plugin side.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. And I also think a good hosting provider is also important.
100%.
Like Kinsta or the WP engines out there. They're a little more expensive, but at least from the security side and speed, it's definitely worth it.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't want to host Gator or any of those type of mass hosts. I've always had dedicated virtual environments for that reason. Definitely host.
We can leave our HostGator WordPress disaster stories for another episode.
Exactly.
So, is there a platform that you prefer to avoid when it comes to SEO?
I would say I probably won't speak to this because I've been in a bubble the last couple of years working in-house and only on WordPress. And I know a lot of the CMSs out there. So it's usually my recommendation, if you can't self-host, I would stay away. I do like Shopify actually for e-commerce. I think it's great for that. But usually, with that said, I usually don't recommend like Blogger, Blogspot, or any of those type of Wix or something that, even though Wix has improved a lot as well, but for me, I like that freedom, that flexibility of being able to customize and scale and grow the site. Even though I might not need it now, the client might need it in the future. I like to set them up to be future proof and that future to be as easy as possible. I've migrated a lot of sites from platforms that didn't have that flexibility, and it's a nightmare. Your traffic usually, well, when I do the migration, traffic doesn't usually suffer, but most migrations, people come to me because someone botched their migration. So most companies do see drops in traffic sometimes for several months, to be quite honest. So that's never a good thing. So probably something that has that freedom, that flexibility. Open source is always good for that, but then it comes with trade-offs with other things as well, of course.
Yeah, and I think that you initially were thinking about Wix. It's kind of funny because it is crazy how far it's come along. I'm sort of rooted in similar concept of you of having more ownership, but honestly, they've made huge strides, and it's going to be interesting. I myself haven't had enough chance to work with it, but it's going to be interesting. I actually had a fun LinkedIn post about a year ago about Wix versus WordPress. I think it was my best LinkedIn post ever. What's better? So, it'll be interesting to see how things proceed.
That is actually my assignment now that I have this little break between in-house roles. I need to spend some time getting up to date and testing out some of the new CMSs. I've heard wonderful things about Duda as well.
Yeah.
There's just some really cool new ones that I would like to play with. Contentful. I know there's HubSpot CMS. I haven't used it lately. I've migrated people away from it in the past. Was not fun, but I would say it sucks because I do get asked this, and my information I have to share today is not really as up to date. It's a few years behind.
So it's a great challenge for you to kind of get up to date. It's funny because I've migrated people to HubSpot. It's not been fun either.
I love their CRM. That's awesome. I think it was in those scenarios, it probably was unnecessary. And for the way they wanted to grow, it just wasn't the right platform for them what they're using it for.
But yeah, the CRM is actually absolutely wonderful, and I recommend it to all of my clients. We've spoken with a handful of digital marketers about AI and SEO. All of them are rejecting the notion that ChatGPT or things like that are going to take away our jobs. What's your stance?
I don't think it'll take away our jobs. I think it will enhance our lives and make us more productive if utilized the right way. I definitely think there'll be people that abuse them and use them in ways that I never would. I don't think, again, but we're in search. There's always been shady practices or things that might work in the short term, but in the long term isn't super sustainable. So it's just another evolution of that. I do think there's ways to leverage and use AI to increase our productivity and our processes, and especially on that side of things. I was building some really awesome things with my team. Again, we would never actually use AI to generate content that we were going to publish. Being in the YMYL space, I know there are some of our competitors was doing that. We built some cool data tools to analyze the results that they were getting and closely watch what was happening. But for the most part, using it to really take away some of that time-consuming work. Now that the code interpreter is available, that's amazing. When you're working at the enterprise level, it's hard to really stay on top of what's actually happening with your site, especially if you're managing multiple sites and you usually are expected to report on a biweekly basis. And it's that's just a small little insight. But being able to tap into something like AI and code interpreter, all these plugins, pull it in with our data, it allows us to get alerts when things happen that needs closer look. And that's been really like so time consuming because we were doing that manually before. Honestly, it's made us tremendously more productive. And I will say we also leveraged it. If anyone saw my SMX presentation I did, I think in early June or late May, I will actually be doing it again. They have August 16th and 17th. They have an AI specific event that's coming up, and I'm going to be giving that presentation again. It'll be slightly modified, but it talks through some of the tools that we built for our CK team in order to enhance our content briefs that we were creating for our editorial team to produce content. So it's some really cool stuff. I don't know. It's very exciting. I find it really exciting.
I was working on sales forecasting for my dad last night using Code Interpreter till like 3:00 in the morning. So I love it. Like it's like I'm ready to like pause everything in the agency and be like, guys, we got to do just Code Interpreter work all day.
Right?
I love it. It's really
exciting. It's exciting time. Oh my gosh. It's so exciting to be in search. And there's so many different things we can use it for. It's like we've only tapped into like the small limited amount of its capability. I think it's really cool.
So as we start to wrap up, if you had to pick a favorite element of SEO, what would it be? Content, technical, links, schema markup. What would it be?
Oh gosh. Not links. I have never been a link builder. I hate everything about having to build links other than the strategy behind the producing amazing content.
Right.
But I will say I'm a technical person through and through. Probably comes from my background starting as a coder. I love schema. I would say schema is kind of technical as well. I like trying new schema and things that we don't necessarily see rich snippets and things for, but testing up new ways to mark up content in ways that I'm hoping will turn into something really cool in the future. But yeah, honestly, and using AI, oh my gosh, able to combine different schema types. And I leverage that to help fix my schema errors. Like it's so helpful and it saves me a lot of time and from beating my head against the wall in frustration when I can't figure out why it messed it up and it won't validate.
What are the top 3 conferences that you enjoy or recommend to our listeners?
Ooh, okay. So this was going to be easy. Obviously, PubCon, I'm super partial because it's like a big family. And I think that's the best part. The networking side, the education is really amazing. But it's like a big reunion and every time I go. The next one I'm going to I have not been. I've heard amazing things from a lot of my fellow speakers who've been to a lot of conferences, but they love Brighton SEO. And I've never been able to travel over to the UK to go. And this year they're having one in San Diego. So the first one in the US. That one comes really highly recommended. And then the third one I'm going to I love DFW, SEM. Their local group,
Status Search.
Status Search, their event, all of the stuff they do in Dallas is just phenomenal. And then honorable mention, I would say I have not been either, but the Women in Tech SEO group has been amazing. Again, they were always over in Europe. And so now there's going to be one, I think, in Philadelphia this fall as well. So just a lot of really cool stuff happening. That maybe if you haven't been able to travel out of the United States, now is your opportunity to go to some cool events. So
love it. I think that's a great roster. I would include all of those as well.
And come to PubCon Pro, Austin in September.
I know. Yes. I think I am going to be coming to that, but we'll see. So Shelly, where can listeners learn more about you?
I would say Twitter or Thread or X. Oh gosh. Oh, that's going to take getting used to. Before I went in-house, I had a Clubhouse group called Clubhouse SEO. We used to do weekly. I would do site audits live. It was the best thing ever.
That's so cool.
But when I went in-house, I was doing nonstop meetings. And so the thought of talking to more people just killed me inside. So I kind of had to stop doing that. But I'm hoping now that I have this break, is it X Spaces or whatever they're calling it? I'm hoping to do some live stuff there. So go follow me on X, Twitter, Threads as well in case it ends up sticking. and Facebook as well. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I don't do a lot of industry stuff on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok. I post nothing about the industry, but I have some cute pets, and they've gone viral a few times on TikTok. So
it's so funny.
yes.
The mention of Clubhouse, it like just brings me back to like, I haven't
know.
thought about that. And I remember you were like super active. It's amazing.
It was amazing. I honestly need to pop back in, but I've just heard it's just died. And I'm like, oh, that'll just make me really sad. But it was really amazing in those early days. So
Shelly, thank you for being a guest on the Digital Marketing Mentor.
thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Digital Marketing Mentor. We'll speak with you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Mentor podcast. Be sure to check us out online at thedmmentor.com and at the DM Mentor on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more Marketing Mentor magic. See you next time.